Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. Welcome back to Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that helps you navigate the challenges and the changes of midlife and empowers you to live a more vibrant second half. If you are finding us today on YouTube, please remember to subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss any more important information. And if you're on the podcast, please subscribe, rate, and share this episode. Today, we are going to be talking about women's health. If you find yourself frustrated with the limitations and conflicting information provided around women's health, especially where it comes to menopause, my guest today has embarked on a journey to develop a solution to help women improve, understand, and regain control of their health. My guest is Alannah Slingsby. She's the co-founder of Moment, an LA-based femtech startup. Alannah, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
I'm excited to hear about your mission and message. What brought you to do this?
Yeah, so it's kind of a long kind of history, which I'm happy to jump in. So first of all, what Moment does is we treat women from the comfort of their home, and we focus on natural, safe, and effective solutions. And we do have an emphasis on hormones, but my interest in hormones starts way back when. I feel like some interests choose you, you don't choose them. So my mom is a medical doctor, and she actually was personally affected by a hormone drug. This was a drug used in the 50s called DES, and it was an incredibly high dose of synthetic estrogen. Now, thankfully, it's no longer used or prescribed really, but it was incredibly dangerous. And they didn't know, well, there's an argument on whether they knew or they didn't know, because the use in poultry farming actually stopped. They stopped using this drug, but they continued to use it in humans. And unfortunately, so yeah, my mom was a victim of this just atrocious, use of this hormone drug. And as a result, she, was born deformed, very, very seriously, had a hunchback, which is crazy. I actually grew up thinking like hunchbacks weren't that weird. Like I was like, oh, some people just have like hunchbacks. And then only like, you're just innocent not knowing these things because it's like so normal to you. And then that's not true. That's actually, it's crazy. Hormones that play that much of a role, they actually dictate whether you'll have a birth defect, which is just crazy. And then she also dealt with, infertility. She never had 2 periods in a row. And so I was always kind of curious why my mom had just such a unique life. Like she was always, she was dealt a hand that a lot of people don't have to suffer through, but it always makes you more enlightened. And just watching her go through that was just so fascinating to me. So when I left college, I was working in finance, and I started getting just more on the side interested in wellness. So I actually became a head of marketing at a cancer institute. And a lot of people don't know that cancer is related to hormones. Most cancers are. Especially breast cancer, which is like something on every woman's mind, I think, just because we all know someone that's been affected by it. And it's kind of presented as this enigma, like, oh, like what causes it? Why do some people get it? Why do some people not? And so while I was there, I just did so much writing, and I still do, medical writing on this topic. But I kept getting questions from women like, well, what do I do? I don't want to get breast cancer, but I don't feel good. And how do we, like, what do I, where do I even start? There's so much noise out there, and you have to kind of sift through it all to find what resonates and what works and experiment. So yeah, we launched Moment about a while ago, and it's, you basically test your hormones at home. You get your levels. Pretty much at any age you can do this. If you're in menopause, it doesn't matter the day because you obviously don't have a cycle. And then if you still are cycling, you just do it on day 20. And then we get the results, and we'll review it with you and come up with a really thorough, innovative plan. I would say we're really cautious and really thorough with our treatments. And that's kind of what sets us apart is we do, bioidentical hormones, but we want the patient to feel empowered and really educated on the tools of what they're doing. Because this are real substances and these are your body. But, the results have been like amazing. And it makes me feel really happy that women are getting not only results, but they're feeling better, and they know that this is to optimize their body, not to like create any more issues. It's really to make them feel better.
It's interesting that you talk about the confusion and the noise.
Yeah.
Because it's so true. We have such conflicting information as women. Mm-hmm. And there appears to be a lack of education in the medical field, mm-hmm. where we feel confident to have these conversations with doctors in general. You know, mm-hmm. it's kind of blanketed under, oh, it's just menopause or it's mm-hmm. just hormones. You'll be fine. Mm-hmm. But I know a lot of women really struggle. And there's symptoms that I've learned about that no one ever talks about. They kind of keep it under like hot flashes and weight gain, which obviously we all know is kind of the most common. Yeah. But, you know, I learned about histamines and hives and, you know, dry skin and all of these other things. And so I feel like the reason I wanted to have you on the show, Alannah, is to add to the more holistic conversation that I've been having around it and empowering women. So tell me, what does it look like when a person comes to Moment to go through this process? What does it look like for this woman?
Yeah. So usually I would say women don't come in for just one singular issue. There tends to be this cascade of, like you mentioned, hot flashes, weight gain, fatigue, brain fog, just sort of this feeling of things aren't right, you know, like I don't feel good. I never really see a chart that's like there's one issue, you know, because everything in the body is so connected, right? Like hormones are acting all over you, so that would make sense. They're in your brain, actually, like a huge concentrations in your brain. So you know, having low hormones and then having brain fog totally makes sense. And then having, you know, weight gain is strongly linked to hormones as well. If you think about when a woman first starts to notice her weight changing, it's a puberty. And puberty is the onset of hormones changing. And so that's just a clear indication of how much, you know, that was for me. Like when I went through puberty, I vividly remember literally not being able to like eat whatever I wanted. After, like, it was a free for all up until, I swear, that like month of puberty where like things were really changing. It's so funny how things are like etched in your brain, but yeah, so it's usually a woman, and it's not really menopause. It's like 10 years before, because 10 years before menopause is when things really start shifting, and that's okay. That's like the time where we go, okay, whoa, I need to check in with my body and start sort of tweaking and optimizing. Up until that point, you kind of have youth on your side. You have a lot more capabilities in every way. Every organ is more capable. And through the aging process, you have this sort of, you know, through everything, through all the experiences in your life, whether it's stress, whether it's exposure to radiation, whether it's an injury to the body, you start to accumulate these sort of experiences that can, over time, it's about the chronic nature of an issue. And so, yeah, so a woman is usually going through all of these issues, and she doesn't really know where to turn. But I think there is something in this like womanly instinct that she knows her hormones are at play a lot more than men, because women are very, you know, for our entire lives, we have a menstrual cycle, which is dictated by hormones, the cycle of estrogen and progesterone, which is beautifully linked to the moon. And so we are just these like beautifully intricate creatures. And so that really comes to head though when a woman is around 35 to 45. It's not really, you know, post-menopause or menopause. It happens beforehand. And that's okay. You know, we have to start looking at things really seriously, just so that we can optimize the body. There's just so many good little tweaks that we can do that are doing they can do really like a lot of great things for the body, and those set of tricks aren't well publicized. I don't know why. I think maybe it's people hang on to studies that they have already agreed with, or they don't want to go farther or deeper, and so we definitely focus on those things. So it's usually like this combination of progesterone, pregnenolone, looking at thyroid, looking at testosterone. And so those elements is kind of what we would focus on if you were to come. Yeah.
So you do the I'm assuming it's that blood prick test where you have the card and you put the drops of blood
Exactly.
and you mail it in. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so after it's mailed in, do you get a consultation? And then the process is all online, right? It's all, that's so fantastic.
Yeah. So, you don't have to leave your house. It's very, very ever, you don't have to go into the LabCorp. You test it at home. It's a little blood prick on your finger. It doesn't hurt much, or I don't think it hurts, but
no, it's that little click.
Yeah.
The little click button thing.
Some people get really nervous about the click.
I know, it's like, oh.
Yeah, you're like, ah. No, totally. And it is like a little pinch. You can warm up, like exposure therapy would like pinch yourself beforehand.
Yes. Well,
pinch.
I want to say that when it comes to hormones, somebody said to me recently that, you have your period when you're a young girl. So hormones are kind of going this way. And then when you get to menopause, it's just that in reverse. But our bodies have been through so much and our nervous systems have been through so much. And, now we have, like you said, a cascade of things happening as well. And I think for a lot of women, like for me, I'm still in perimenopause, and it really the whole cycle change just started for me this year, and I'm 55. I have friends that have been done for years, and I'm like, So it's interesting. I'm a late bloomer, I guess, or a late unbloomer. That's what we'll call it.
I think that is considered a good thing. Maintaining that menstrual cycle for as long as possible. I think it is interpreted as a healthy thing. So
yeah, it's just funny because all my friends are like, oh yeah, I'm done. I'm like, oh, I just started.
So I think you should think like that's good I think our interpretation from what we've seen, that's probably a great thing. And then, if it is this way of thinking about it as how you experience menopause is really an accumulation of your health.
Yeah.
Your entire life.
Yeah.
And that's almost a hard pill to swallow, right? Because the worse your symptoms are, it's related. Like nothing's overnight. Like even like something like breast cancer, that takes like 10 years to develop. And so, and it's the same thing with menopausal symptoms. It's like there are red lights that happen as early on as, in your 20s. And that's because of this disturbance of hormones. It can happen really early. And so again, that prolonged nature of something. And that's when you see this accumulation of, why do I experience worse menopause than someone else? It's not random. It's not a coincidence. It's deeply connected to how you've lived your life. Yeah.
And how does this relate to genetics, for example? Do you find that there are patterns? Because I've heard conflicting information that just because your mother did something a certain way doesn't mean your body will necessarily do it the same. Are there markers that can kind of indicate what it would be like for a woman?
Yeah, so I think the biggest genetic component that people like to bring up is BRCA1 and 2, and these are genetic mutations. Yeah, and I've talked about this and written about this before, is that when you bring that up, really the most interesting part of those genetic mutations is that a lot of researchers have concluded is they basically mean that you are more sensitive to hormone imbalance, which means that it's even more important for you to be proactive about your hormones. And so I don't think it's necessarily like deterministic that just because you have BRCA1 or 2, something's going to happen. I think it's, okay, I have to be even more on top of this than everybody else because I am just that more sensitive to hormone imbalance. And that's what, a lot of the researchers have shown. And so, I used to, work at a cancer institute, and writing about this makes you, I think, more empowered rather than sort of fatalistic about these things. And like, I just want to tell people that have those, like when I hear, like when they message me or DM me or whatever, or email me, I'm like, well, let's get on a good program. And that's what we do. We get women on like good programs to optimize for these things, so that you're not scared and you're not worried about, if something's going to happen because of the mutation. Now, as far as, will I have worse menopausal symptoms because of something in the genes? I think that is far from conclusive. I think there's a lot to be said of, we inherit a lot of things from our parents. We inherit their possibly, their experiences, their lives, their emotions, their traumas in a lot of ways. But again, I don't think it's black and white on whether you are going to get a health issue just because your mom had someone. And this is coming from someone that's like, I'm a DES daughter, the drug, I'm a granddaughter. Studies show that I am supposed to have issues. And I don't really, I don't know if we need to always kind of be a victim to those things. We, because at the end of the day, like we have to bloom where we're planted. We're given the hand we're given, and those challenges, those battles are all meant for us. And that's the hero's journey, right, in all of our lives. And so every health challenge that you experience is a chance for us to move to the next level. And that's what we want to help women do. It's like, okay, we have a recommended reading list. Like, we want you to be as educated, as empowered as people that are really familiar with these topics. And that's really, I think women want that. I don't think we need to dumb it down. I think women want to understand what's going on with their body. I don't think they want to be, handed this kind of like these studies that are configured, or these sort of guesses, or these sort of like just theories on things. I think they want to understand really on a deeper level what's going on. Yeah.
And I think it's universal, right? Unless someone like my mom had an emergency hysterectomy at 21.
Wow.
So she had
Serious.
she had a completely different experience. Her hormones, actually, she had cystic fibroid tumors from birth control. So back in the 60s, of course, everything was very intense. So she went in to check on one thing and came out with no parts. So, I guess in some ways I'm the miracle that came pre my mom not, losing all of that. So it's interesting that you talk about those treatments that used to be so aggressive. And what I'm hearing around birth control, which we can choose to go into or not, because at this point we're talking about midlife, and birth control isn't the number one thing in our minds, but women who have taken birth control, does that impact their menopause journey as well?
Yeah. And I think some like doctors do prescribe birth control for menopause as
Really?
well. Oh yeah. That's a very that's pretty common, I think, as in a like birth control and antidepressants for menopausal symptoms, which is just something we don't do. We take a different route because there's really a lot of safe and effective solutions that can achieve amazing results without possible worse side effects. So like, why wouldn't we use those,
Yes.
But yeah, I think, that there's, when it comes to birth control, it totally, and if you want to like go on like the evidence-based route, it depends on which study you like, basically, at this point. Because like someone will say, well, this study showed there's no risk of birth control changing, my health. And then you see another one, I think like on Susan G. Komen, actually, it says that it's, the risk of breast cancer is like really like 50% higher from taking birth control. And so I think it depends on the lens you see the world at this point. We sometimes play this game of which study is more right, and that's fine. I love looking at which studies have been done beautifully and kind of make us understand the world in a more meaningful way. But I think the problem with birth control is women are given it without even understanding their menstrual cycle and understanding what's in it or what they're taking. Like the progestin in birth control is mostly based on the molecule testosterone, and they change testosterone to make it somewhat similar to progesterone, so that they can call it progestin. So like, and a lot of women don't even know that. I've like done videos and they're like, wait, is that why I get acne after taking birth control? And like some women have that effect, and that's probably why it's androgenic. And so, yeah, I mean, I personally wouldn't take birth control because I just don't think there's I think it's risky to mess with the beautiful cycle that we've been given. That is just my risk assessment of taking it. I have taken it in the past, and I just have found that perhaps it's not worth the risk. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I understand as a medical professional, there is a carefulness that needs to surround everything that
Totally.
is said. And so I
Yeah.
appreciate that assessment. But it is interesting you mentioned antidepressants. I
Mhm.
was back in history, you see women that were put in asylums about the time of menopause. There was a
Right.
huge time in history where that's how women were dealt with, because it does make some women feel crazy,
Hmm.
the
Hmm. Hmm.
hormones. But I love the idea that there is a solution, because our bodies are so beautifully designed
Hmm.
and they
In so
can
many ways.
heal. And this is a natural process. And it's just like you were talking about, there's things we're carrying our health forward, I guess, is how you put it, is the way that I would remember it, and say, okay, we're carrying our health forward. But the beauty about health, from what I can gather, is it can be like a ship. You got that little rudder. You can turn it around with good choices. It may
Oh
not
yeah.
be perfect, but there's
Yeah.
hope, right?
Right. 100%. I mean, your mind, your body, your cells are always responding to new ways of living. And
Mm-hmm.
so, you can always, I mean, not, not always, but because of if something's been chronic for a long time, turning off those stressors may take a lot
Mm,
more effort. But in a
yes.
lot of ways, we're always, we are always changing and evolving. And so yeah, like at moment we're thinking about how do we restore this health that's happening as possibly as a result of the natural aging process and possibly as a result of environmental factors. And so it's just about restoring, healthy levels of hormones. At the end of the day, that's like the entire mission. Whether it's PCOS or fibroids, like you mentioned, we're seeing a lot of fibroids actually, a lot. And some doctors don't think they can be shrunken, and once they hit a certain size, it's pretty hard to get under control. If they hit about a grapefruit size, then a hysterectomy is, it's very hard to manage without one. But I don't think a lot of women are also explained how serious you will feel the difference when you get whether even a partial hysterectomy. But I don't know if
With
sometimes.
the fibroid tumors.
Yeah, because yeah, for that's a common treatment for fibroids, like what happened to your mom. Um, but so yeah, we are seeing a lot of patients right now with fibroids, and basically fibroids are very estrogen dependent. There's actually never been a case in the literature of a woman getting fibroids pre-puberty. So um, in those reproductive years, that balance of estrogen and progesterone is so important, and that's why fibroids tend to happen in a younger age, right? Like in their 30s. It's not necessarily like you get one in your 60s. That's a lot more rare. And so for fibroids, correcting thyroid function, we usually will look at thyroid for fibroid specifically, and then that balance of estrogen and progesterone. Those two things, if anyone has fibroids listening, then we're just seeing a lot of them, but we're having really good results right now with getting those under control. So yeah.
The thyroid comes up a lot, Alannah. That seems to be a huge piece of the feminine hormone journey. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure it affects men too, but since we're talking about women,
Yeah.
I seem to be noticing, and I'm not a doctor, so I would love to get your perspective on this, but more and more women are talking about having thyroid issues. Like it's become like, I have a cold, I have a thyroid issue. Like it's so
That's so
common.
true. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, it affects women more than men because estrogen can inhibit thyroid function, and we just have higher, we tend to have higher levels of estrogen when things get off balance. But yeah, I mean, 100%. I personally have dealt like that's one thing that was like figuring out my thyroid was it was like a miracle, honestly. I take thyroid. I take natural desiccated thyroid. It's actually over the counter. You can get prescription. We do prescription at moment. Um, but it is so important for a woman because it regulates your metabolism. And so if you can't lose weight and you're doing everything and you think you're doing everything right and you're working out, a lot of times it just can be a lot harder if your thyroid is low. And so supplementing sometimes you can fix it with just food alone or diet or like certain herbs that can help support the thyroid. but taking it as well is pretty can be really life-changing. Now most doctors will just focus on something like Levoxyl, which is a T4. We might consider something more innovative, like combining T4 and T3, which is just a different kind of thyroid, which is what I take. And I will never go off of it. It was, I was that person that was like, I don't feel like I'm at my true weight. Like I felt like I just wasn't quite there yet. And I was doing everything and working out, and then started taking thyroid, and it was, life-changing. It was just the best thing ever.
Well, and that affects your body temperature, right? It affects your moods. The thyroid is a powerful little organ.
Yeah, totally. It's very, I think it's very underrated. But it's hard to diagnose because the thyroid panel is really wide. There's such a wide range. And so when you go to most doctors, if you're within the normal range, there's really no impetus to look at it deeper. But sometimes you might be considered normal, but things still be, not quite optimal. And so our doctors will look at trying to really achieve optimal levels with thyroid. But it's really, especially in old, like going through your 40s, just part of the aging process, your thyroid does decline. And then that is linked to having lower hormone levels, because you need, in order for cholesterol to be converted to hormones, you need thyroid. And so if you don't have that thyroid piece, how are you going to get progesterone and pregnenolone made from cholesterol? It's not going to happen. And so that's why these things go so hand in hand. There's rarely like, oh, I just have this one issue. Like we said earlier, it's because it's so beautifully complicated and like connected. And that's just the way it's all designed. So restoring healthy thyroid function is a big piece of the battle. And then or not a battle, it's just just optimization. There's no we don't need to create a war that's not there, but
it feels like it though. I think for some women it feels like a battle, because we feel, I think, as women sometimes helpless, like this is just going to happen. Like I said, when you go to a normal medical environment, there's a dismissiveness to it. But like my experience has been cycling through different symptoms, and I did my own research because I was like, why do I have hives on my feet, and why do they itch? Like, and this started oddly, not thinking about it, in my late 40s. And so now I have that like rear view mirror. It's like, oh, that's what was happening. Got it. Because it was off of the normal list that I had heard about. So I was totally thinking, is it a cleaning fluid at work? Is it something I'm eating? I like started going through all these things. And I'd like to ask you about that too. Like when women's bodies are in this state, right now on Instagram and all these other places, they're talking a lot about hormone balance being the solution. And so when we talk about food sensitivities that can come up in menopause, and there's so many things I've learned. And of course, I'm just an armchair because I don't have the research like you do. Is it the case that maybe something we've eaten all of our life, now our body is not processing it the same? Are there also shifts in what our body is favorable towards now, that maybe it used to be fine and now it's not fine?
Yeah, I mean, I think food allergies can be a result a lot of times of like the medications you've been taking for a long time. And that can create gut dysbiosis, especially because, serotonin is mostly made in the gut. And so, I mean, gut health is really, it's like central. It's kind of ironic that it's also central to your body. But also, food allergies can take, a while to develop. And just sometimes if you just eat one thing you're not supposed to eat once, that might not be that big of a deal. And then you just keep eating it and your body's like, no, stop. But I mean, as far as like how confusing what should I eat is, it's the same thing. It's like a lot of people, all these conflicting opinions, people don't know even what to eat. And so whether I think, it's beyond just, is it related to hormones? It's like, where do I even start these days? What do I, I'm so confused. And we do help with women, to achieve that we have a nutrition course that every woman does when they have their first appointment. And And I think the first chapter is actually unlearning nutrition myths, because it seems like women almost get the short end of the stick when it comes to dieting and all these like recommended rules and all these things. And I think our approach is almost like we need to get back in touch with our instincts. And what do you genuinely like to eat? Like, without listening to the loudspeaker of anyone, what do you enjoy? Like, what really, like, and why do you enjoy it? And sometimes we override our instincts and the voice in our head because of what someone on Instagram said. They may have a year of training, in what, they may have been like, they may be like, 21 years old, and you're like, you latch onto it, and then you realize you're like, wow, that was not the right thing to do. And I went through that same thing too, as a young woman, being told that I need to eat salads 3 days, 3 meals a day, only to realize that was not what my body enjoyed. And I think the best thing to do with, food and food sensitivities is to really listen to the feedback loops, like deeply and strongly. What is your body telling you? Because the body's messages are the truest ones. They are not susceptible to, what someone else is saying. They're real. They're tangible. They don't know what some person on Instagram said. They know what they feel. And so really our body's feedback loops are the most honest messages we have, beyond studies and whatever, because you are not a study, you are a unique person. And so if we could just allow people to have permission to truly get in touch with what they enjoy eating and what their body likes to eat and what they feel good eating, instead of all these kind of made up theories that, and that's the crazy thing about nutrition science is no one has this like book of answers. It's all conjecture, and that's science, and that's awesome. But that means you have to, every assumption that comes your way, you have to challenge, and you have to think critically about it. This is your life. This is your health. You only have one body. And so it does make sense to be critical of everything you've been told, and really be like, well, how does this apply to me? And how do I keep evolving and experimenting? Especially with food. I think in our nutrition course, we do recommend prioritizing protein. That's from experience with a lot of women. Like, women, I don't know, they've been told that you be careful, don't eat too much protein. And then you have this protein deficiency, and your liver is not going to work right without protein. And if your liver doesn't work right, you can't detox out hormones. And so, yeah, I think the noise has probably done more bad than good for nutrition. And it's so huge for how you feel, especially in menopause. It's like I said, you become less capable in every way through the aging process. And so finding a permanent dietary routine has never been more important. One that you can continue for the rest of your life. You don't want to keep worrying about your weight. You don't want to have to keep worrying. Like, there's too much to worry about in life. There's so much to worry about. Worrying about your weight that's one more thing that we don't want you to have to think about anymore. And I like went through that though, for sure. I was like, I want to keep losing weight. It was always on my mind. And now I feel so happy that like it's just not like a concern anymore. But it was only because I kept digging for like, not accepting a low quality way of living. I was like, I don't want to do this. I can't do this for the rest of my life. I can't keep worrying about, wanting to lose 10 pounds. I want to, I want to do stuff with my life. I don't have time in my brain for this, but that's where I was, I was like, I want to keep losing weight. I couldn't figure it out. And so I just couldn't settle for that. And so, so I just kept challenging what everyone says. You have to eat salads every single meal. No, you don't. You have to listen to what your body actually likes to eat. And that's kind of the truest form of instinct. Yeah.
I think that's such great advice, Alannah, because we do get a lot of information about what we should do, right? This is what you should do. And if you don't do it this way, you're not doing it right, right? We use such qualifying language that makes us feel shame or guilt, or, then you get into body types and how they react, right? Some people are just skinny as a rail all their life, and it doesn't matter what they do. But there is something to be said for that intuitiveness that you're talking about. And as women coming into midlife, I'm obviously older than you. I mean, I started this podcast because there's so many conversations I felt needed to be had around what the experience of midlife was. But as I go along, I really recognize that we bring so much life experience, all the things that we've done and been, but this hormone piece is very to the quality of the aging process.
Yeah. I mean, so we're basically utilizing science to optimize life forever. Historically, it would have been just, accept the way you feel and get used to it. You've got to get used to it. And that's certainly a lot of women's approach, and that's okay too. And then now we're just utilizing the miracle of hormones. So our hormones are, plant-based. They're from yams. And it's actually quite amazing that the universe provides, because they are extracted from a substance that plants naturally make. And they are transformed in a lab so that you can take a pill that replenishes what diminishes for a lot, it might diminish for a lot of different reasons, whether it's diet, whether it's stress, whether it's just what happens through aging. And so some people use synthetic, which is just different. Basically bioidentical matches the exact hormone your body already makes. It's a carbon copy of what you make. But the difference is the additives. So for something like prometrium, they for some reason, they want their pill to look pink. And so they use red dye, yellow dye, titanium dioxide, peanut oil. And that's to probably maintain shelf stability. So, I mean, they're pharma products, so they just probably have, they have to make a ton at a time. And anyways, ours is custom, and we don't use any of those ingredients, the red dye, the yellow dye. And so women sometimes, they don't want to take those things every day. I'm like, I don't eat any nuts. So I'm like allergic to peanuts and stuff. So I couldn't take it. But also, it's kind of a matter of do I want to take red dye or yellow dye every day, even if it is in safe amounts,
Well, it's cumulative, right? Health and the things we eat and take, it's a cumulative thing on a cellular level, is it not?
Yeah, totally. So yeah, you would be, taking, and you take it for the rest of your life pretty much to maintain, people feel good, taking progesterone almost every day if you're in menopause. And so if it's something you're taking forever, you kind of do want it to be high quality. But of course, the world we live in, it's going to be, prometrion's very covered by insurance, usually. And like with anything these days, I guess you get kind of what you pay for. And so we make everything custom. And so it's just different, but it is really high quality. We've had amazing results. I just got an email yesterday. I asked if we could share it. She was like, I've done one cycle of your progesterone and it's worked amazingly well. And it's not that often you hear like something was amazing from like a supplement. I guess when you're young, if you don't feel a benefit from anything, you likely don't need it. So if you don't feel any different from, I mean, that's one thing with hormones. If you don't feel any different from like pregnenolone, it's likely because you didn't need it. And so, or it wasn't strong enough, or your dosage isn't high enough. But she said it's amazingly well. Like, just like honestly made me feel so good, because some women actually aren't, like a lot of doctors, they don't focus on progesterone. They only focus on estrogen, because of precedence. Estrogen's always been viewed as this, it's the female hormone. There's books that date back saying if you don't take estrogen, you won't be feminine. And so there's a lot of mental, with anything, with the marketing of these products is really a mental like roadblock. And that's why a lot of women don't even take progesterone, which it can be incredibly protective and it's very safe to take. And so pregnenolone and DHEA as well, those are all what we use, are all carbon copies of what you already make. And so it's really just about restoring those a more youthful level so that you can just feel good, really. And yeah, we do testosterone as well. Low testosterone, is a huge issue, especially in midlife. And so we want to look at all the, the entire endocrine system. They're all dancing really beautifully together. So it's very strange to just focus on estrogen when they're all beautifully interlinked. It really doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Mm. It seems as though, that the system is set up to make us dependent on maybe a solution that is causing more problems.
Yeah. So with hormones, yeah, I mean, it's usually not a product you use once, but if you're in midlife,
right.
It's recurring. For younger women, actually, progesterone isn't needed long term because it can facilitate the synthesis of progesterone. And so you don't, same thing with thyroid. So for young, we do see, women in their 30s and their 20s. And so for them, but yeah, I mean, you're right. When you are older and you want to use these things, it does take more upkeep. And that is completely your choice, though. It's definitely, it's up to you on what you want to do. There's a lot of these products, though, they're not expensive. You ultimately can buy pregnenolone, progesterone, DHEA, and thyroid online. You don't even have to go through us. And I'm just purely saying this so that someone can start looking into those substances if they're in an older age. And those products aren't pharma products because likely they can't be patented. So they're made from the earth, like plants, like progesterone made from plants. So while ours are prescription, because a lot of times women need more leading if they are confused on what to do. They need more leading with a doctor. And that can be nice to have a partner with these things. And well, how long do I really need to take this? Or am I on this for the rest of my life? When we get those questions. But it just goes back to, I think we all innately want a long, thriving longevity, this life that it continues to, we continue to thrive. But I love what you said about, I think maybe in this society that we live in now, like I look at my mom and she's 65 and like for a lot of women, I think menopause is really this time where we should acknowledge that a woman has arrived at a place of wisdom, and sort of arises as an elder of this community and the society, and she comes with just so many gifts that we under acknowledge these days. And so, beyond hormones, I think there's this emotional component that we've just completely forgotten with entering perimenopause and menopause, because it's really this time to pause and reflect on life and embark on a new type of adventure. On this adventure of, giving back to whether it's your kids or your grandkids or society in a different way. And so I think it's just, we can talk about health and hormones and all this stuff, but on a really like deeper level, when a woman reaches this age, it should be interpreted as really special and a gift and beautiful, because it is, I think that, we have these different chapters in our lives for a reason. So
I agree wholeheartedly. There's a clear seasonal cycle to life.
Yes.
It's very clear. And even the beats of our heart, like the things that draw us, the things we're interested in, or the things we begin to pay attention to. And I think getting our bodies in balance, back to, again, what you talked about, that whole intuitional way, and not in a woo-woo way, but really learning to hear what our bodies are saying, what our hearts are saying, so that we can have an aligned body and an aligned life, because it doesn't have to be the confusion or it doesn't have to be the, well, your life is over, or, well, it's going to be hard. Well, you're going to struggle, because these are all messages that we do hear. And I am, if I understand correctly, we're seeing this is happening at an earlier and earlier age now than maybe traditionally would be the case.
Yeah, because puberty is happening earlier and earlier. And oftentimes the earlier you start puberty, the earlier you start menopause. And that is actually really, like you said, that word cycle. It's very, very true. There's always these cycles in life, and that happens to be one of them. In the literature, that's like a concern. I have a niece, and she's starting puberty really, really young. You have to wonder what kind of like chemical soup we're in right now, whether it's like the food we're eating or the plastics. Plastic exposure is huge. Phytoestrogens, xenoestrogens. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things to consider, a lot of things. Basically, we are one with the environment, and so we're this big organism acting together. When other people are sick, it affects everybody else as well. And so just as, hormones are all interlinked, we are all interlinked. We're interlinked with our environment, with people around us. And so, yeah, if menopause is happening earlier and earlier. And a lot of women do like to feel that cycle, so we'll try to prolong it as long as possible. Even when your menstrual cycle stops, it doesn't mean that the body has completely lost its cycle. There's still messages from the pituitary to the brain. And so, yeah, it kind of goes to this message of like, okay, yes, you can no longer produce a period, but that's just one aspect of it. We have to kind of think more deeply about it.
That holistic perspective on our life is very profound.
Yeah, I saw this one company that was like, okay, well, you can just sign up to get your estrogen cream. And I'm like, that's just one aspect of it. Like,
you do know there's other hormones, right?
Yeah, there's other things. And they like, okay, well, yeah, I mean, it's not the route I would take personally. Because especially with like breast health, it's about this beautiful balance between the hormones. It's not just about estrogen. And that becomes really clear if you've ever talked to someone that had breast cancer. They put them on estrogen blockers for a reason. They look at their hormones for a reason. That's the first thing they'll look at if you get a breast cancer diagnosis, is how are hormones dictating this pathology. So that just goes to show you how these messengers dictate the state of your life. They are like magic little messengers, but they're ultimately giving the messages that we send it. And so it's not like we are just subject to whatever these messengers do. We are telling the messengers what to say.
Fascinating. Well, Alannah, we have covered a lot, and this has been such a good conversation. So what are 3 kind of pieces of advice or encouragement that you have for women in terms of, taking control of their healthcare and feeling empowered and less kind of, I don't know what the word is. I don't want to use the word victim because it sounds so dramatic, but really feeling like we don't have it. It doesn't matter. All women are going to suffer. This is just how you have to live. So I would love to have 3 anchor points from you about women's health.
Yeah. I think the first one would be just to not settle for a way of living that isn't thriving, even if it is, in midlife or post-menopause. There's just no reason to. There's, we have these very foundational things that we can solve for. And so I don't think you should settle for a way of living that doesn't feel true or euphoric or like longevity. And then number 2 is I would continue to seek out the answers that you find to be true in your way, whether it's from someone that you really like to read or respect, or have come to recognize has the experience that aligns with you. I think I would just continue the exploration of knowledge with your health and with your and with yourself. And then 3, I would value your intuition over all else. Because if you keep living study to study, if you keep living loudspeaker to loudspeaker, you are going to continue to be tossed around. Take the, what you hear and what you see and apply it and evolve and find different ways that work for you, but no one was handed this book of facts, like I said. So you have to kind of sift through it, and that's part of, modernity, if you want to, if you choose to take these things for your life. But your own bodies is not lying to you. It's the most true message we have. So above all else, you've got to value yourself. No provider, no study, no practitioner is going to care about you the way you do. They don't know what your life was. They don't know what your history was. They didn't live with you for 30 years. You did. So trust yourself. Find the messages that your body is trying to say over and over again. You just, the answers generally appear when you're kind of ready and open for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, Alannah, how can people get in touch with you and what you do?
Yeah, so you can sign up to get your hormones tested on momenthealth.co. And when we get the results, we can partner you with one of our doctors. And really, we're here to help in any way. If you feel free to DM me on Instagram or send us an email at hello@momenthealth.co. I am happy to answer anything, or just talk on the phone, whatever you guys need.
Awesome.
Yeah, our website is momenthealth.co. And we are expanding, hopefully, to new states soon. So definitely sign up for the wait list if we're not in your state yet.
Awesome. Well, Alannah, I want to thank you so very much for bringing your wisdom, your passion, your study, your discipline to this conversation, and expanding women's understanding of the ability that they have to have control of their health, the power that they have to live a more quality life, that we are not, this is not a sentence. Mm-mm. This is a beautiful part of our biology. And I really appreciate the way that you basically poetically describe the beauty of what we're going through and putting it in such a different, more empowering perspective. I really appreciate your time and your wisdom and bringing that to me today.
No problem.
Awesome. Friends, today, if you find us on YouTube, just look down below. I will have the links to Alannah and her company. And if you're on a podcast platform and you're listening while you drive, if you head over to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 310, the links will be there as well. And so today I've been speaking with Alannah Slingsby. She's the co-founder of Moment, an LA-based femtech company startup. Now, this conversation is, again, another piece in this health puzzle that I have been building for you as a tribe, because the more empowered we are around this conversation about our own bodies, the more wisdom we can apply to our health and the way that we choose to live. And it helps us, women like Alannah who do this work. They are the one that's leading the path that helps us lead ourselves and lead our daughters and our granddaughters and our sisters and our friends to a life that's more intuitive and beautiful and less out of fear and less out of struggle. Yes, our bodies are changing. We know this. But where do we come to this place of acceptance of the changes, but empowerment in how those changes make us feel? It's such a wonderful conversation. And if you have any questions at all, like Alannah said, reach out to her. She's there for you. And again, those links will be down below in YouTube or on www.feminineroadmap.com/310. So you can get that link and get to her quickly. Thank you so much for being a part of our conversation today, friends. I hope that this has given you something to get excited about in this change of life. If you're in it or you know someone that's going through it, please remember to share this life-changing information. Again, friends, I'm so grateful that you spend time with me each week, listening to me and my guests have these conversations. And I look forward to bringing more important conversations, empowering conversations, and inspirational people in the weeks to come. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.